Ever watch someone like totally crush it at something? Like it's just instinct.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like a chef who just nails the seasoning without even thinking, or an athlete making a game-changing play. It's like, how do they even do that?
And the thing is, a lot of times they couldn't even tell you. It's like they just know W. That's what
Right.
we call tacit knowledge, right? The stuff you can't really explain, even if you tried.
It's like a sixth sense, almost. And get this, today, we're diving into a way to actually understand those instincts, to uncover what's happening in our brains when those aha moments hit.
We're talking about the repertory grid technique, RGT for short.
RG2, I like it. Sounds kind of high-tech even.
It's like getting a behind-the-scenes look at how people think, especially in fields where experience is everything, like teaching, for example.
Perfect example, because that's exactly what our deep dive is all about today. You shared some research on how biology teachers decide what makes a good teacher, right?
Exactly.
But before we get into those findings, let's break down this whole RGT thing. What is it really?
Well, it all comes back to this idea called personal construct psychology, PCP.
Okay, PCP.
It was developed by this guy, George Kelly. And basically it says that we all see the world through these like personalized lenses shaped by our own experiences.
So like two teachers could look at the same student and have totally different takeaways.
Exactly. One teacher might see a quiet kid and think disengaged, while another one's thinking deep thinker. Our own personal constructs color everything.
I'm already seeing how this connects to those aha moments we were talking about. It's not always a conscious thing, right?
Yeah. Right. And RGT is cool because it helps us actually tap into those personal constructs, those hidden lenses.
Okay, so how do we actually DO that? How do we use RGT to like get inside someone's head?
Think of it like this. You want to know how someone makes decisions, right? RGT is a way to have them compare and contrast different factors. And in doing that, they reveal their priorities, even the ones they might not realize they have.
So it's not as simple as just asking them, hey, what's important to you? Because they might not even know the answer, really.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research on biology teachers so fascinating. It's a perfect example of RGT in action.
All right, you've got my attention. What's the first step? How do we start uncovering these hidden thought processes?
So the researchers started with a really open-ended question, just what makes a good biology teacher? They wanted to see what naturally came to mind for these teachers.
Makes sense. Start broad, no judgment.
Right. And then, to capture those initial thoughts, the teachers were given these cards and asked to write down specific skills or qualities they associate with being a good biology teacher.
So like knows their stuff or passionate about science, those would be on the card.
Exactly. Those are what we call the elements. And they had to come up with 12 each, which starts to give us a glimpse into their individual priorities when it comes to teaching.
12 elements. Okay, I'm starting to see how this builds. But where do those hidden thought processes, those constructs come in?
That's where things get even more interesting. We'll pick up there right after the break.
And we're back. Still diving deep into this whole world of tacit knowledge and this RGT thing.
Seeing how it can reveal those hidden connections in a teacher's mind, it's pretty wild.
Right. Like, you can be a total whiz at biology, know all the facts, but that doesn't mean you can teach it well.
Totally.
Yeah.
Knowing the material and knowing how to teach the material. Two very different things.
For sure. So when they used this RGT with the biology teachers, what did they find out? What other surprises popped up?
Well, remember those visual maps we talked about? The ones that basically show you a teacher's thought process.
Yeah, like a mind map.
Yeah, exactly. Those maps showed some really interesting stuff. For one thing, most teachers had content knowledge, the actual biology facts, as a totally separate cluster in the map.
Meaning like they saw knowing about cells and DNA as different from knowing how to make it interesting for students.
Exactly. Think about it, just because someone's a fantastic novelist doesn't mean they'd be a good writing teacher.
True. Totally different skills.
Yep. And that's what this study really showed, that difference between content knowledge, or CK, and this thing called pedagogical content knowledge, PCK for short.
So PCK is all about how you teach it, not just what you know.
Exactly. Most teachers, at least according to the RGT, saw those as totally separate things in their minds.
But then there were those few teachers whose maps look different, right? The ones where knowing the stuff and teaching it well were kind of merged together.
Right. And that's where those interviews came in handy. Remember teacher B2 from the study?
Vaguely. Remind me.
Her cluster analysis, that visual map, showed this strong link between knowledge update and scientific literacy.
Okay, those were two of her elements, so she saw them as connected somehow.
Yes. And when they talked to her, it turned out her passion for keeping up to date with biology, learning new things, that was totally linked to her wanting to make biology relevant and engaging for her students.
Makes sense. Her own excitement kind of fueled her teaching.
Exactly. And that wasn't even something she realized she was doing. It was subconscious. But the RGT brought that connection to light.
Wow. I'm seeing how self-awareness is important, not just in teaching, but in any field.
For sure. When you get those hidden biases and assumptions out in the open, you can make way better choices.
Absolutely. And it's not just about individuals, right? This RGT can be used in bigger ways too.
Absolutely. In fact, researchers have used it to look at patterns across different types of teachers, not just the biology ones.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They wanted to see if this whole RGT thing could work across the board.
Yeah, like how physics teachers grade, or how teachers feel about changes to the curriculum. They even looked at how students' understanding of science changes over time.
So RGT is kind of like this versatile tool. It's like it can unlock secrets about how people learn and teach no matter the subject.
And it gets even more versatile because you can actually tweak it depending on what you're trying to figure out. There are actually three main types of RGT: fixed, partial, and full.
Right, right. I think I remember reading something about that. What's the difference? It's like choosing different settings on a camera or something.
Perfect analogy. So in full RGT, just like in the biology study, people come up with their own elements.
Yeah.
Total freedom, like manual mode on a camera.
Gotcha. So then fixed RGT would be like using the auto setting.
Exactly. The researcher decides on the elements and the constructs beforehand. It makes comparing people easier because everyone's working with the same stuff. More structured.
Okay, and I'm guessing partial RGT is somewhere in between.
You got it. It's flexible. Like the researcher might give you a list of elements, but you get to define your own constructs, or the other way around.
So it's all about finding that balance between like having some structure, but still having some wiggle room depending on what you're trying to understand.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes RGT so powerful, not just in education, but in lots of fields.
It sounds like it. This RGT thing has huge potential, not just for researchers, but for anyone who wants to understand how they tick, or how others tick, for that matter. Back for one last deep dive into the repertory grid technique RGT. We've covered a lot of ground, from those gut feeling moments to this whole system for figuring out how we make sense of things.
It's like we're peeking behind the scenes of how our brains work.
Totally. And I think the big question for our listeners is, so what? How does any of this apply to me? I'm not a researcher or a teacher.
Right, right. But that's the cool part. RGT isn't just about understanding other people. It's about understanding yourself.
Okay, I like where this is going. So how can we actually use these RGT insights in our own lives?
Well, let's think about decisions for a second. Any decision, big or small.
Oh man, too many decisions.
Right. But what if, when you're facing a choice, you could hit pause and use RGT to, like, break down your thinking, figure out what matters to you most?
I'm listening. Go on.
So, say you're trying to decide if you should take a new job.
Big decision.
For sure. What are the things you'd consider? Those are your elements,
So
right?
salary, commute, benefits, the actual work itself. Am I on the right track?
Yes. Yeah, here come those constructs, those hidden lenses. Are you more about security or a challenge?
Ooh, good question.
Right. Is work-life balance a priority? Or are you all about climbing the ladder? It's about bringing those unconscious things to the surface so you make a choice that really fits.
So you might think you want one thing, but when you really look at it, you realize something else is more important.
Exactly. And it can be eye-opening. Helps you get out of your own way sometimes.
Love that. And this doesn't just apply to career stuff, right?
Oh, not at all. Think about relationships. Ever have an argument with someone where you're just like, how are we not on the same page all?
All the time.
Right. Well, chances are you're both coming at it with different constructs, different lenses.
Like that whole what color is this dress debate. Everyone's saying the same thing, but it means something totally different to them.
Exactly. And just realizing that can be huge. Instead of assuming someone's wrong, you start to think, okay, what are their elements, their constructs? What's their perspective?
It's like you understand where they're coming from, even if you don't agree with it.
And that's how you build empathy, better communication, all that good stuff.
So better decisions, stronger relationships.
Okay.
What else? I feel like this RGT thing has even more potential.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about education, but think about any kind of learning.
Yeah.
What if we could use RGT to, like, unlock how experts think?
Oh, that would be amazing. Like fast track our own learning by learning from the best.
Right. And it's already happening. Researchers are using RGT to study experts in all sorts of fields: medicine, engineering, even chess, trying to figure out what makes them tick.
So instead of just trying to copy what an expert does, we could understand how they think.
Exactly. And that applies to anything. Could be formal learning, could just be watching someone who's amazing at something you're into.
It's like getting a glimpse inside their brain, seeing the world through their eyes.
And this is still just the beginning. There's so much more to discover about RGT and how it can help us understand ourselves and the world around us.
Well, my mind is officially blown. I have a feeling our listeners have a lot to chew on after this one. Any parting thoughts for them?
Just this. Imagine if we could take all those aha moments, those flashes of insight, and actually share them with others in a way that really clicks.
Democratizing expertise, making it accessible to everyone.
Exactly. And I think RGT can help us get there. We can learn from the best, but also we can learn to communicate that knowledge in a way that truly resonates.
Powerful stuff. Well, this deep dive has been a wild ride. We've explored how we think, how we learn, how we connect. Thanks for coming along for the journey.
Absolute.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.